up, back and through. A common build-up pattern used in the modern era of football, but what is it and how is it used to affect a game? So looking at the tactics board, how can we discuss this build-up and how that you can play through the lines using the up, back and through method, especially when these two players are trying to zone off entry into your double pivot. Okay, so what Manchester United did really well for the goal, and the reason we were using Manchester United for this is because this is a perfect example of how to use this build-up mechanism, and Amorim is trying to implement that. It's something he did a lot at Sporting. Despite the loss, this goal was a good representation of how you can use this effectively. Now, when they're trying to zone off this section of the pitch, what they're essentially trying to do, they're trying to block your entry into that central sort of pivot, okay? Which means that this player here can step slightly higher, which is what we saw, to try and entice one of these out, okay? So what actually happened is the number 10 was sitting off the sort of the wrong side of Mainu, sort of like this. So it was actually Chris Wood who was really looking to block that entry into Agate in this sort of position, looking at like a slightly disjointed front four there. What Euro and Martinez did, and the way that they're affecting the game, is they're stepping off even further as De Ligt steps forward, so that that passing lane is open to come backwards, and they're also widening the distance of the pressing distance for those wingers to get and apply pressure on those wide centre backs. So they're now occupied thinking about how quickly and effectively they can get towards that ball if that ball does circulate backwards. That means that if Wood is now moving, these players, of course, they're now not sort of in these lanes to block these passes, which we're about to speak about. They're too focused on applying the pressure there, but also blocking the pass into these wing backs, who, again, for Manchester United, start quite a bit deeper compared to teams that are maybe playing in a 3-5-2, 3-2-5 more often, playing very high up wingers. These guys are very involved in that first phase, again, to make sure that these wing backs or full backs of the opposition team are honest in where they're marking, and again, can they apply pressure if they need to. So what happens in the goal is De Ligt stepping forward on the ball, we'll get rid of these lines, is able to entice Wood to make a movement, again, slightly more this way to stop Agate getting the ball. De Ligt, being on his right foot, is then able to dig out this pass as Fernandes comes into this pocket of space. You've got the two number 6s for Forest, and he is following Fernandes, and he's on his back. So Fernandes can't turn. But the beauty of the up, back and through is that this comes forward, up, to then go backwards / across to Agate, who is now out of the cover shadow of Wood. Wood's trying to stop that entry into Agate. So instead what they've done is, with the up, back and through passing sequence, they've gone into Fernandes, who's got a man on his back, so he can receive the ball facing goal, but he can't turn. And then he's put off a first-time ball into here, which is where the space is, as you can see, within that sort of entry point within that 4-2-4, because of how they're trying to block off that central entry. They're now, instead, they are in this area. Agate is on the ball, and he can drive forwards. Wood, these guys are out of the game. Mainu can sort of attack forwards as well, but again, he's sort of just pottering around here. Fernandes can then break as well. And what you can then end up with is, because these guys are going to get forward and apply pressure to these wing backs, they're going to be sort of taken by surprise in that. Højlund as well dropped really deep. And what this causes is those moments of indecision, because what you've got is a 6 versus 6, essentially. You've got the 6, the back 4 for Forest and the 2 defensive mids, and then you've got the wing back breaking forward, and then that front 4, because of course Agate is carrying the ball forwards. So you've got 6v6. But because of the way that you've broke through their initial pressing scheme, they're now out of position. They're now scrambling and where to sort of apply pressure on the ball. Somebody needs to apply pressure. Somebody needs to go with the runner. And because Højlund is deep here, the two centre-backs end up sort of both covering sort of this guy stepping over because he sees Fernandes running forwards. You've got this guy stepping over because Højlund is coming from a deeper area into here. So he's stepped as well to sort of mark that central run. But then along with that, because Højlund is more of a goal threat in this scenario, or he's going more centrally, this player here is really important, because he sort of doesn't know whether to stay or to go. And what he ends up doing is sort of covering Højlund a little bit more as Agate drives forward, leaving that passing lane in for Garnacho. Again, these guys are on the retreat, of course, but Garnacho finds a lovely little lane to sort of attack into because of the indecision of this man on where to mark. If he'd have fully followed Garnacho and then left Højlund in this sort of 1v1, now, of course, you have a different problem there because you've got your striker only occupied by one centre-back, and they don't want that in the box. They'd rather have that overload, a little bit extra protection. But again, that by doing that, you're going to leave another man spare. So it's all about sort of creating those moments of indecision. And that's when mistakes can happen, poor defensive moments and judgments can be made. And again, it opens up that lane for Garnacho to roll in, gets his shot off, and then Højlund arrives for the tap in. And that goal was an indictment of how United wanted to build up through their press. And if in all honesty, I actually think United were okay in this game, but again, indecisive. Some really poor moments defensively. Anana was poor. There was some really poor sort of moments overall. And again, they didn't take their chances. But this video is more so to highlight what the up, back and through can achieve. This isn't a really United video. This is more to do with the build-up scheme of an up, back and through. So I'll show you a few more examples of this on screen now for some other teams as well. Here's an example of the up, back and through, but for Chelsea in their goal against West Ham earlier in the season, with Levi Colwill provoking the pressure from Kudus to step up and leave that passing lane through to Enzo Fernandez. Fernandez then plays the pass back in the sequence to Caicedo, who is in the cover shadow of Jarrod Bowen, who's the striker, leaving him as the spare man to receive in that pocket of space when that ball does go up to come back. And to complete the sequence with the through ball, Caicedo puts Jackson straight through the middle, where he goes through on goal and puts it in the back of the net with a lovely finish. So that is the concept of the up, back and through movement in build-up and how it is used to effectively manipulate opposition blocks. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and let me know any other tactical solutions or videos you would like to see on the channel with explanation in depth.